It's a pity that in the universities they don't teach the political economy, which we are studying at the University of Dar es Salaam, which helped us so much. The laws that govern the evolution of society. If you look at Europe in 1400, it was a three-class society. You had the feudalists, you had the farmers, the peasants, you had the artisans. By the time of the French Revolution, European society had metamorphosed into a four-class society. That is, the feudalists were still there, but a new class had emerged which never existed in human history. This was the middle class. The people who made a living between the difference between the cost of inputs and the final product. What we call profit. Now this class was called the middle class. We, the more ideological, were calling them the bourgeoisie. This was a new social class. It had never existed in human history. They were making a living on profits, while the landlords were making a living on rent, the feudalists. But the middle class came with another class that never existed much in human history. These were the working class, the proletariat. That's what they were calling them. How were they living? They were living on wages, on salaries. They had nothing else to support them except the sale of their labor. And then the peasants were still there. If you go to Europe now, you will no longer find the feudalists, they are no longer there. You will no longer find the peasants, they are no longer there. You now have the middle class and the skilled working class. So here, when we talk of sustainable development, does it include transformation of the society? If you have a peasant producing another peasant, and you go to the villages, you find 3 generations of peasants, grandfather, father, grandchild, they are all there. This is very dangerous. So therefore, I would really appeal to the thinkers to also emphasize this issue of qualitative jump of the society. And in order to assist this qualitative jump, we identified a number of bottlenecks that were blocking it. Bottleneck number 1, in the case of Africa, before independence, we had a problem of no freedom, lack of decision to make, of power to make our own decisions. So that would have been bottleneck number 1 before independence. But after independence, in many countries, when you hear this chaos in many parts of Africa, it is on account of a weak state. A state without the pillars to support it. without an army, without a political structure of organized politics, because you cannot have an army without a historic mission. All armies have a historic mission. The British Army was called the Imperial Army. Their mission was to conquer backward people and exploit them. That's why the head of the British Army was called CGIS, the Chief of the General Imperial Staff, an army of empire to conquer other people. That was their mission. And they were not hiding it. Now, the American army, you remember how it started. The American settlers rebelled against the British king and poured his tea in the ocean, Boston Tea Party. And their slogan was no taxation without representation. In other words, they were making middle-class demands of democracy. So they had a political movement, a movement for democracy, political. But that political movement needed an army to defend it. That's how you get the army of George Washington, the Continental Army. So the army of the Americans is to defend capitalism. The Red Army is an army of peasants and workers to defend the interests of those people. What are the African armies for? This is the problem we had here. We had Idi Amin. Idi Amin, that is a soldier. A soldier of what? What is your mission? I'm just soldier. Soldier. Without mission. This was part of the crisis. So, a weak state, because you don't have a political movement in that country, which now creates for you a capable army and other structures. Mwalimu Nyerere, our elder, had to resolve Mwalimu Nyerere had to resolve the old Tanganyika rifles and create TPDF, Tanzanian People's Defense Forces. That's one of the reasons I'm sure Tanzania has been stable all this time, unlike all of us who had a lot of problems. So strategic problem number two after getting independence has been a weak state. But the weak state is from, you could call it strategic bottleneck number three, wrong politics. Politics without a historical mission. The politics of identity. If you say our politics are politics of tribes, of religion, of gender chauvinism, how would you build a capable state? This is the problem we have in some of the countries. Clan armies, sectarian armies. Countries have broken up because of identity. When I went to Sudan, Khartoum, I asked them, I said, what do you call identity in Arabic? They said, Hawiya. And what do you call interests in Arabic? They said, Maslaha. So I said, what is your politics? Is it maslaha, interest, or identity, Hawiya? So that would be the third bottleneck, the wrong politics. Weak state created by bad politics of identity rather than politics of interest. I don't have time to go into all that, but in some of the documents we have elaborated it.